Ed Klein has a new book out. It's called The Amateur, and it's causing an awful lot of talk. In fact, it just debuted #1 on the New York Times list, which is not an easy accomplishment. We brought Ed in because I wanted to talk to him and get a little deeper than just the Jeremiah Wright stuff, which, honestly, as we talked, Ed, you know, there's a lot about Barack Obama I want to believe. You know what I mean? I think I've made up my mind on who this guy is, and I don't need anybody to pile on if I don't know that it's true. And so I wasn't rushing to, I don't rush to any Obama book. And then you came out with the Jeremiah Wright audio tape, and you have him dead to rights. All of these things were said.
Right.
Let's go into some things that I think are a little more revealing, but I want to talk to you about your sources on them as well. Valerie Jarrett is somebody who's so under the radar for most of America. They have no idea. I believe it was her father-in-law was a communist. You know, and the Obamas and Valerie Jarrett are this tight. You say that she's more powerful than anybody else in the White House outside the Obamas. True? True. Okay. Why do you say that?
There were 4 people who came to the White House after Obama won. David Axelrod, Robert, his strategist, Robert Gibbs, his spokesperson, Rahm Emanuel, who had actually been in the Hillary camp until after the election, and Valerie Jarrett. All of them, except Valerie, are gone. Back to Chicago, all of them. Robert Gibbs and Axelrod are running the campaign, the Obama campaign from Chicago, and Rahm, of course, is the mayor. Valerie remains there, best friends with Michelle and her chief political advisor, and simultaneously the president's senior political advisor, the only Chicago voice still left in the White House.
So why doesn't she have a more prominent role? Why isn't she chief of staff? Why do they put her kind of back?
She's more important than the chief of staff. In fact, she got rid of 2 chiefs of staff. She got rid of Rahm Emanuel, and she got rid of Bill Daley. She loves to be the implementor. She doesn't really do anything. What she does is she goes at night at 6:30, she goes upstairs to the family quarters, has dinner with the first family. No other official in the White House has that privilege. She goes on vacations with the first family to Martha's Vineyard. She is the last person to leave the Oval Office after a meeting, has the ear of the president. No other person in the White House.
All right. You get into Valerie Jarrett's connection to Solyndra, which I think is pretty amazing stuff, and nobody's talking about it.
It's incredible stuff.
Okay, tell me.
She used to be, when she was in Chicago, first she worked for Daley, Mayor Daley. She's a machine person. And then she became chairperson of the University of Chicago Medical Center. And while she was chairman of that medical center, the Kaiser Foundation gave her tons and tons of money, a lot of donations. That same foundation owns 37.9% of Solyndra. That same foundation had its lobbyists in the White House more than any other group about Solyndra and about solar energy. She met with the Kaiser himself, who was a huge bundler for Barack Obama, many, many times, brought him to the White House. It was an inside job, that whole Solyndra thing. Today, that same job that she held in the University of Chicago Medical Center is now held by the best friend of Barack Obama, Eric Whitaker. And guess what? The White House has just awarded that group $6 million grant for their urban health initiative, whatever the heck that is. So it's all intertwined.
It is. I mean, it really is. It's one of the, I said, probably the first spring that he was in after I saw the stimulus package. I said, this is going to go down as the dirtiest administration in American history if anybody cares to do the homework. It doesn't seem that hard to get this to unravel here if anybody cares to do it. So you've been in the media forever. You were at the New York Times.
Right.
Why? Why is no one unraveling this?
Why has nobody ever vetted this president in the mainstream media?
That's a question, not an answer. Why? You have to have an opinion.
I do have an opinion. You know, when I was at the New York Times, it was run by a guy named Abe Rosenthal. In fact, he hired me.
Okay.
And he used to say, my job, and I want to be remembered for this when they put up my tombstone, he kept the Times straight, down the middle. He is now dead, and he left a long time ago. And that whole newspaper has just gone way over to the left. It's a organ of the left.
But there's nobody, CNN, MSNBC, even Fox doesn't necessarily expose.
You know, I called up a source at the Chicago Sun-Times who helped me with this book. Mm-hmm. And I said, Barack Obama comes from Chicago, David Axelrod comes from Chicago, Valerie Jarrett comes from Chicago, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright comes from Chicago, Eric Whitaker, who got a bribe, comes from Chicago. You guys have never done a story on this. Are you going to do one? And his answer, we're thinking about it. We're thinking about it.
Okay. All right. So let me get a handle on what you believe Barack Obama. Dinesh D'Souza, and I believe this to be absolutely accurate, I believe he is an anti-colonialist. That's what motivates him. What do you think motivates him? What is he?
First of all, I agree with Dinesh about that. Day one, Barack Obama picks up the bust of Winston Churchill that was in the Oval Office, says, get rid of this. And they, without even telling the British, they sent it back to the British Embassy.
Right.
Big kerfuffle in England. Where
That is an exact replica we called the White House over in the Oval Office.
Oh, yes, right.
We had it made. We had one made just like it back on the, right exactly where it was before he boxed it up. Anyway, go ahead.
He sat at the knee of the Reverend Jeremiah Wright. It wasn't so much that he was in his church listening to those ranting sermons. He didn't go to church that much, but he did visit the Reverend Wright hundreds, if not thousands of times from the time he became a community organizer until he became president or ran for president. Jeremiah Wright stands for exactly what you're talking about: black liberation theology, anti-colonialism, an oppressed class, the blacks, an oppressor class, the whites, a Marxist view. And I have no doubt in my mind that when you call Barack Obama a Marxist, everybody, oh, he's not a communist, he's not Stalin. I'm not saying he's Stalin. I'm saying his economic ideology is Marxist. It means engineering social change, engineering the economy from the center of the government. And I think he truly believes that.
Michelle Obama, is she more of a ideologue than he is? Who's the power player between the two of them?
I asked that question to a lot of people in Chicago. Among the African-American community who knew them when they were newlyweds. And in fact, a lot of the women worked out with Michelle at the local gym. So they knew her really well. They all say, I tried to find out, maybe I shouldn't have, but I did, whether he ever fooled around sexually with other women. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. I said, why are you looking at me that way? She would have killed him. He's afraid of her. He wouldn't dare do that. She wears the pants in the family. Michelle is the power in that relationship.
Now you put, and see, this is, I've got to be real honest with you. This is what's confusing to me, because you start, the first line in the book, I think, is, this is a reporter's journal, right? And I know that I told my staff early on, these are not our enemies. They're enemies of freedom, I believe. And we let the chips fall where they may. If it's true, we report it. If we don't have it nailed down and it's not essential to the republic, don't say it, because it's going to discredit you. You go into a story which I think is fascinating. I personally, again, I read it and I'm like, I think that's probably who she is. But it's one of those things that if you put it out on the table and you don't have the names to back it up, it discredits the story of like Solyndra. Why did you include things like Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey fight? Which again, me personally, I'll bet you that's true. Why did you put that in there? Or can you tell us where you getting these stories? Tell the story first for anybody who doesn't know.
Okay, the story is that Oprah, we all know, is pivotal in getting Barack Obama the nomination because she threw her backing to him, not to Hillary. During the election campaign, she was huge. Afterward, she was on what she thought extremely close terms with Obama, talked about redecorating the Lincoln bedroom, talked about how to draw up a list of guests for the social parties they would have, talked about how he should treat television, you know, not too much exposure and so forth.
I really thought she would be almost like a communications director or consultant in a way.
So did she.
Right.
However, according to what she told, not one, not two, but three of her closest associates and friends, who were my sources, when Valerie Jarrett got word of this, she went to Michelle Obama and said, you know, this woman's acting like she's the first lady. She's acting like she has a direct line to the president. Rather than going through me, Valerie Jarrett, which everybody else has to do, and which you and I talk about, Michelle, before they get through. And they decided to freeze her out. And what happened is that when Oprah offered to do a show, an Oprah Winfrey show at the White House to launch the anti-obesity campaign that Michelle was behind, Michelle held a meeting and said, I don't want, and this is from people in the meeting that I spoke to.
How many sources?
Two.
Two sources.
Two sources from the meeting in the East Wing. I don't want a rich, fat lady waddling around here being the emblem of my campaign. A rich one, that's also capitalism, you know, and fat. And Oprah, these two people, one of these two people who are my sources, is a very good friend of Oprah's and told her about this. Oprah went bananas and went to her friend Gayle King and said, I'm going to send off a letter. And Gayle said, no, you can't do that, can't do that. But ultimately, Oprah just washed her hands of the whole thing and decided they don't want me, fine. It's their loss. I've got other things to do, like my own network. And she's not going to campaign for him in 2012.
It's an amazing story. And
you know why? You asked me why I put it in. That's the story. And I'll do this very quickly because it is emblematic or symptomatic of how they treat, how this White House treats its own friends.
That doesn't spell good things for America at all. Thank you, sir. The name of the book is The Amateur. The Amateur, available, #1 New York Times bestseller, available everywhere now. Back in a minute.